Hare Krishna. So today we will be discussing on the 13th chapter. Now, in 13th chapter, if you will see, or the last 6 chapters, primarily, consistently, we'll see Krishna highlighting and describing about the modes of nature. Here, in the 13th chapter, it is what are the things which are discussed?
6 questions.
6 questions.
Prakriti.
Of these 6 questions, there are mainly 3 factors discussed, right? Whatever you call them, right? And what are those things?
Field, knower of the field, and what is knowledge.
Right.
Yes.
So, and someone else will like to share what are they called in Sanskrit? All these 6 things.
Purusha, Kshetra, Kshetrajna, Jnanam and Geyam. And I left one.
Prakriti.
Prakriti.
So 2P, 2K and 2J. Right. So that will be easy. Prakriti, Purusha, Kshetra, Kshetrajna, and Gyan and Geyam. Right. If you see, Prakriti is easy for us, material nature, right? And Purusha, what is Purusha?
Living entity. He is the enjoyer in the material world, and then there is a supreme enjoyer also.
And why is living entity also known as a Purusha? Then, if Purusha is the supreme personality of God, and who is the enjoyer, who is the creator, who is everything, why is then living entity known as also Purusha?
Because it
Imitate.
is the
parcel of the because of the tendency, of material enjoyment. And someone said imitation, right? And so, and that tendency to enjoy is there because actually we are eternally happy and we are seeking that happiness at a wrong place, right? So Purusha is living entity as well as. Now of this Purusha, if you remember, or it will come actually, if you see, the 15th chapter is titled as
Purushottama
Purush Uttam. Right? There are Purush, but there is one Uttam Purush. Purushottam. Atma is there and there is Paramatma. Brahman is there and Parabrahman. Right? So that clearly differentiates between the two. Right? Prakriti and Purusha. In Purusha we have living entity and Purushottam. Right? Then Kshetra. What is Kshetra?
The field, which is the body, and also, that is
right. So body. Now, Harshita, what do you know? What do you understand about the Kshetra here in this chapter? What has been described?
Kshetra is for the conditioned soul, for the material body. It is the field of activity for for the material body.
Right. Thank you. So now this Kshetra is the field of activity, and Kshetragya, who will answer this? Rajesh Prabhu.
Is the knower.
Kshetragya is knower of
Krishna.
The field of activity.
Field.
Right? Kshetra and Kshetragya. Gya means knowledge. Knowledge about Kshetra. Kshetragya. So who is knower? He is knower of the field. And who is the knower of the field?
The individual soul.
Yes. Individual soul is knower of which field?
own field.
Own field. And is there anyone who knows about all the fields?
Yeah, it is Supreme Lord.
Right?
Super.
So, yes. So if we see in the third verse, right? He says that there is Kshetragya. He describes in the second verse that there are Kshetragya, right? All the entities, they know about their Kshetra, their Kshetra. But there is Kshetragya who knows about
All the fields
Cha Api Mam.
with the
Cha means, right, also,
also.
certainly. Cha Api Mam, right? And who is that who knows about everything?
Sarva Kshetreshu Bharata. That is
Here it
super.
is written, Kshetragya
Yeah.
Chapi Mam Vidhi
Vidhi
Sarva
Sarva.
Kshetreshu Bharata. Sarva Kshetreshu knows about all the fields, right? And who is that?
It is Paramatma, super soul,
Super soul, the
Krishna.
supreme personality of Godhead.
Godhead.
Right? So Krishna knows about all the fields in his manifestation as Paramatma. He knows everything about all the field of activity, and that distinguishes between the two again, Kshetra and Kshetragya. There is one, Kshetragya, there are two, one who knows about a respective field and other who knows about all the fields, right? And then Krishna says, someone who knows about the Kshetra and Kshetragya is in knowledge, right? And what does that mean? That means that living entity, when the living entity distinguish between the three things. First is that the living entity, this body is not the living entity. The Kshetra, there is difference between Kshetra and Kshetragya. And there are one Kshetragya who knows all the Kshetra. So the person who knows about this is in
Full
knowledge.
knowledge.
Right? So that is known as Gyan. Right? Gyan. That is known as Gyan. And what is the Gyan?
Understanding about the Kshetra and Kshetragya.
Understanding about the Kshetra and Kshetragya, right? And then Krishna is explaining that, you know, that there are different transformation also in the body. Like he will further describe in the subsequent verses that there are, you know, many things related to body, right? The changes in the body, the qualities of the body, right? So these things will be further described, the composition, the origin of the body, and also about Kshetragya, right? The identity of the Kshetragya and all those things, right? And in the third verse, he says that according to my opinion, right? Now, if you remember, we talked about a triangle. Whenever we talk about spirituality, we have to refer to three things. And what are those three things?
Sadhu, Guru, Shastra.
Right? Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. Now, Krishna here in the Bhagavad Gita is acting as
Spiritual master for Arjuna.
Spiritual master for Arjuna, right? So, in the fifth verse, he is referring to two other point of reference, and the two other point of references are Sadhu and Shastra. And he specifically says, right, about Vedanta, Brahma Sutra, Vedanta Sutra, right? So this is so that he consolidates, right? Whenever people, you know, they talk about spirituality, these three things should be aligned with each other. Whatever your guru is saying should be aligned with Shastra, should also be aligned with sadhus, right? Nothing can be independent of the other. So that is very important. You know, Krishna takes the opportunity, right, to do so. Then thereafter, there are 24 elements of material nature, right? This material. So now I will request who will talk about Harshad Prabhu. What are those 24 elements? Harshad Prabhu is there. Harshad Prabhu, you are. ठीक है, you are.
So, Prabhuji, the Pancha Mahabhuta first. Then the three elements of the subtle body, that is mind, false ego. Yeah, and the other things are the pancha indriyas. That is the karmendriyas, or the 5 karmendriyas. And what else?
Jnanendriyas.
Sorry, not able to.
Jnanendriyas, 5 panchendriyas, 5 jnanendriyas, 5 gross elements and associated sense objects, mind, body, intelligence, and I think there is something called consciousness, which was described.
Here it is described in this particular verse. See, it is easy to remember. 24 means 4 sets of 5, right? Gross element, 5, 5, two type of senses, Karmindriya and Gyanendriya, right? And then 5 sense objects.
Yes.
Right? So these are 20. And the 4 in this verse, sometimes it is little different, right? So in this particular verse, the 4 things are
Buddhi.
avyakta.
Avyakta is
described
pradhan.
as- Yes.
Yeah.
Because pradhan, why is pradhan as avyakta?
Because the modes are inactive.
Modes are inactive, right? The pradhan state. That is why avyakta. And then those 3 things, the subtle elements, mind, intelligence, falsehood. So there are 20, right? And then Krishna explains that there is also transformations, right? Like qualities. And that qualities of a body, of a kshetra, is actually nothing but, the mind game. So all those things, hatred, love, desire, those things, right, are described thereafter. Now, this is what we talk about knowledge, right? But if you
that is not knowledge.
Yeah.
That
So,
is field of
see,
activities.
kshetra, right? The knowledge, what we talked about, what is knowledge?
No, I think field
are
of activities and no more of that.
Part and parcel of Krishna.
No. See, in 3rd verse,
Kshetrajna who knows about both of that is the knowledge.
is in knowledge.
Is in knowledge. Yes.
So one who knows that I am not this body, I'm soul, and there is a distinguish between me and the super soul, is in knowledge. But if you remember from 10.10, what is the process of acquiring that knowledge?
Yeah. Madchitta madgata prana. That and then tesham satatayo. Always doing the engaging devotion.
So 10.9 was machitta matagata prana bodhayantas parasparam katayantascha mam nityam tushyanti cha ramanti cha. Then tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upayanti. So a devotee who is engaged in talking, hearing, and remembering, right, in bliss and priti purvakam, that thing always with love. Dadami buddhi yogam. I will give them the knowledge. Please try to understand this knowledge. Is it it cannot be attained by reading book independently or memorizing the book. Because if you remember 4.34 also, there is a process that this knowledge can only be acquired when you approach your
Spiritual master with attitude of submissiveness and surrender.
Submissiveness, surrender, service. Right? Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena se. Uddeshanti te jnanam. Jnaninas tatya darshina. Person who is in knowledge can impart you knowledge when you do these things. Tadvidhi pranipat. Pranipat, pariprashna, and sevaya. Right? You pay obeisances. You approach with submissive, humble attitude. Right? There is an attitude. Right? In obeisances also, submissive and humility, there is an attitude. Service also is an attitude. So process of acquiring knowledge is not material. See, unfortunately, being highly influenced by the material world, we are so passionate about things. We even take spirituality passionately. I can understand things on my own. But That's impossible. That's impossible. Because Krishna is saying that this is not dry knowledge. This is otherwise, people will start speculating if they depend on themselves too much, right? And in order to avoid that, Krishna is highlighting the fact. And the attitude which he has highlighted in 4.34 is kind of elaborating the process of acquiring knowledge in subsequent verses from 8 to 12, right? Humility, pridelessness, simplicity, approaching a spiritual master, right? Steadiness. Then you cannot be, you have to be equivocal. You have to situate yourself away from the association of non-devotees, that is living in isolation. Isolation means away from association of non-devotees. Then trying to understand Krishna, going deep into philosophical understanding, then devoted to him. Those are things. So these, if you see truthfulness, these are some of the important characteristics to understand the knowledge, right? This is something which is very important for us to understand, that and that is what we do. We are understanding Bhagavad Gita, but at the same time, if you see, we involve in services, right? Whenever it is Janmashtami or even washing utensils. That day, the last time we were attending a program, and there, I'm not going to name the person, but there we saw that the person was humbly, mopping the floor, and his wife was watching him, uh, uh, and she was wondering that how come this person has never lifted a broom or a mop, and here he's mopping the floor. Why? Because spirituality actually makes our heart soft, and we understand that when we engage in menial services with humility, that makes Krishna happy. Right now, if you, I don't know if you know, there is a pastime in the Leela of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu visited South India, he visited Sri Rangam, hmm, Sri Rangam, and there he saw that there was a person sitting in the corner of the temple, and he was holding the book upside down. And which book was he holding?
Bhagavad Gita.
And he was like, we can hold a book, but he was holding it upside down. And he was not just holding the book, but what was he doing?
Crying.
He was crying. Now, you hold a book upside down and you may cry out of frustration that I don't understand anything. Most of the time when we cry out of attachment to material objects or frustration that I wanted this, or I lost this, or someone hurt me, someone is not taking care of me. But why was that Brahmana crying?
By considering, by thinking,
Compassion. I think.
Lord can take such a trivial position of becoming a charioteer for his bhakta
Yes.
by looking at the
He
cover
was
page.
crying. Yes, he was crying in love for Krishna. He was crying thinking that he is the supreme personality of Godhead. But for his devotees, he is happy to do anything. And that, understanding, how did that Brahmana gain that understanding? Do you think that yeah,
By crying.
why, how could, we are chanting Krishna's name, and we have gone through good philosophical understanding of Bhagavad Gita. Now we are already passed through 3 cantos of Bhagavatam. When we are chanting Krishna's name, we don't cry.
Yes, he has the, I think, highest love.
How did he get that? Why was he trying to read Bhagavad Gita?
Because Krishna
Krishna
imparted
is
that.
instruction.
Guru's instruction.
Spiritual master
Yes,
said.
a spiritual master told him that you read Bhagavad Gita daily. He was just following the instructions of his spiritual master. Although he was illiterate Brahmana, but he was trying his best. And that is what is known as humility. And that is the process of acquiring knowledge. And we will see if we follow, the Navada Bhakti. The Navada Bhakti is what?
9 devotional services.
What are they?
Sravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam,
Padasevanam.
Sakyam, Padasevanam, Atmanivedanam.
Yes, the 9. So if we follow even any one of them in Navada Bhakti, right, or Panchang Bhakti, it is described by Rup Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita, right? Chanting, reading Bhagavatam, deity worship, residing in holy place, right? If we follow any one of them also, right, religiously, sincerely, and we follow these rules and regulations. Actually, it is said that the most important of these 20 elements described here, the most important is devotion for Krishna. If we have devotion for Krishna, then the other things will be cultivated. But in Bhagavatam also it is described that we should even try in parallel to cultivate these qualities, right? So it is very important. If we follow, spiritual life nicely, then by default our heart will become soft. Uh, we will lose our pride gradually, right? We'll become clean in heart. We'll become steady in our services. We'll try to understand Krishna. We will try to love Krishna, right? And as gradually our heart will be cleansed by chanting, hearing, following the process, all these qualities will be acquired, right? But we should sincerely also try to follow our spiritual life sincerely. Okay. And then in the subsequent section, what is described from 13 to 19?
Super soul characteristics of soul.
Right. So it is, so far he described about Kshetrajna and Gyan. Gyan is knowledge. So process of acquiring knowledge. And then what is the object of this knowledge is Gayam. And who is the object of knowledge?
Paramatma.
Again, there are two.
Yes.
Again, there are two. A soul and
Super
super
soul.
soul. Right? We described about soul. Soul is also permanent, changeless, birthless, and all these things. Right? And then from 14 to 18, various characteristics of Paramatma are described. Right? Present everywhere, uncontaminated. All these qualities are described from 14 to 18. And then what is very important in the 19th verse? What is described in the 19th verse?
Whoever understands this Kshetrajna and the knowledge, that devotee who studies this thoroughly, it was said that he will attain my nature.
Yes, right? Mad bhakta etad vijnana. So here in this verse, the word bhakta is used specifically.
Yes.
And so we have to understand that devotee is one who can understand all these things nicely, and then he will attain to my nature, right? What is the nature? Nature is Satchit Anand, right? So because as a soul we are also eternal, full of knowledge and blissful, right? So that is again something very important for us to understand, right? So it is very nicely described thereafter, right? And then in the next section, what is described in the next section? There are two things remaining. What are those two things?
Two P's.
Two P's.
Prakriti and Purusha.
Right. So what is Prakriti?
Three modes of material.
See, three modes of guna.
Gunas.
They are guna. The three modes of material nature, right? We say three modes of material nature. So material nature is Prakriti, and material nature by itself is eternal. But there are some manifestation of that material nature. One is vikaras, the transformation, and gunas, the three modes, right? So this is known as Prakriti. And if we also our body is also made of those material, elements, right? And why are these material elements eternal?
Because they are part of Krishna. They are from Krishna's energy.
Yeah. Prashad Prabhu, you want to say something? How come? Explain how are they eternal?
Yeah, because that is also produced by the material energy only. By spirit.
Yes. See, Prabhupada gives an example that if there is a building, a skyscraper building, what is that building made up of?
Bricks, concrete, sand, everything.
Yes. And if the building is destroyed,
Same thing. It will go back to the normal.
but it is not that the material will extinct. Material will change the form.
Yes.
Similarly, what happens after the annihilation?
That the dead matter will be left over.
Yeah, the material, the elements will still be there.
Still there. Yeah, yeah.
So that is, philosophically we understand, right? Now, also here the relationships between the two is described very nicely. Relationship of Prakriti and Purusha. Right? Now, Purusha, first it is described with the living entities. Does anyone remember these words?
I remembered.
Yeah, Shanmukh Prabhu?
13.22, right?
30.27.
2, I think.
13.22. Yes. 13.
Purusha. Purusha. 13.22. Purusha prakritisto hi bhunte prakriti jan gunan karanam gunasangasya sad asad yonisa janmasu. That is one verse.
So because of the association.
Yes.
See, because of the association, when the living entity identify itself wrongly with what?
Body.
The body. Then
it will be it will be entangled in the material world and keep taking various birth of various species. I think.
Transmigration happens.
Transmigration happens.
Right? And how we can, Prashad Prabhu, you want to say something?
No, I just unmuted. Yeah.
And having described about this, right? And what does he describe next? He describes that yes, there is this Purusha who is kind of gets entangled, right, because of misidentification. But there is also a superior Purusha, who is the kind of impartial witness, who is the controller, who is the proprietor, who is Maheshwar, right, is described.
Yeah.
In 20.
Next verse. Yeah.
Yes. Right. So again, please try to understand, because there is a philosophical school which says that there is only one entity. There is no difference between the two. But here we clearly see that there is difference between the two. Right. Clear distinction is there. Right. And a person who knows this actually, will attain liberation. Result of this knowledge is that the person will attain liberation. And thereafter it is described, in the 25th verse, right, that there are even other methods What are the other methods described?
Sankhya
Meditation.
and meditation,
Meditation,
and also karma yoga.
Nishkam Karma, right? So Sankhya, Ashtang, and Nishkam Karma. And the best part is that what is the easiest process
Devotional service.
which is described in
That 8 to 12 verse it was described.
26th. Read the translation of 26th. 26th, it is saying just by hearing.
Okay,
Just
okay.
by-
Yes. Again, there are those who, although not conversant in spiritual knowledge,
Right.
begin to worship the Supreme Person upon hearing about him from others. Because of their tendency to hear from authorities, they also transcend the path of birth and death. Yes.
So the process of hearing and chanting is authentic, right? We heard it in 7.1 also, right? Touch Shrino. Similarly, here also it is described. right? And then comes the last section. So Krishna having described everything, right? All the 6 things. So we'll okay. Is there anyone who has not spoken? Will like to revive? What are the 6? Remember by 2P, 2K, and 2J. What are they?
Prakriti,
2P.
Purusha, Kshetra, Kshetrajna, Jnana, Jnaya.
Very nice, right? So Krishna has already described. Now he's just kind of give a summary, little bit elaborate. What is the relationship between them? And also there is very important thing which he will describe, that the soul never gets entangled, right? So, and also the vision of a seer. Now, if you remember which verse was that?
13.28.
No, in
Standard. Oh, 5.18. Vidya
5.1. Vidya Vinay Sampanna. Brahmane
Vihastini, Sunisaiva Swapakaicha, Panditas Samadarshi.
Samadarshi, right? So that is also described here, right? So the relationship, like how, now see, please try to understand. There is a similarity, oneness, what we call as oneness across. And what is that oneness?
Soul.
Super soul, super soul, accompanying super soul, accompanying the soul. Yes.
So actually we are all one, in a sense that we are all souls. Constitutionally, we are all souls. And our nature is also Jivire Saruphoy Nitya Krishna Das, right? That is the vision. And those who have this clear vision, they say that the person will not be degraded. That person will not be degraded, right? And then this person has a clear vision of Jiva and Prakriti, and that is known as Brahman vision. Brahman vision means vision that it sees that everyone is a soul, right? Constitutionally, right? And super soul is also there. Whether it is an ant or a demigod, across everyone is a soul, right? And now, what does 32nd verse says? That soul, does anyone remember 3.27?
Prate kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasaha ahankara vimudatma karta ahamiti manyate.
What does that mean?
Okay, the spirit soul, when it gets bewildered, it thinks that all the activity, I'm the doer, but actually he is only part of the doer. Everything is actually executed by the material nature.
Yes. So this verse also says that the material nature is not doer, not the doer. And we heard it in we understood it in many times that it's the material nature who gets everything done. What is the soul's work actually?
To desire.
Yes. Now, when it says, but what is the main problem with the soul?
The doership mentality.
Doership mentality.
Because
and also
of false identification.
False identity. Avidya.
Avidya.
Ignorance. Avidya means thinking that I am this body. That is the basic problem. A root cause. Identifying ourselves with the body, right? So we have to be very careful with that. And when we identify with the body, we think, I am the
Doer.
I am the doer. We can think that, you know, if you press the escalator, what happens? You just turn the steering, what happens? You know, you speak something and your wife will bring a glass of water, you know, or your husband will turn the car, the husband will bring something. Think, I can command, right? But if you see, there is something which is known as, there are diseases where you cannot even pass your urine, even if you want to. You cannot pass your stool, right? So we see that these are medical conditions. Can we digest our food by our will? Can we have our eye not blink? Right?
No.
If you see, can we fly? So we are so much dependent on material nature, right? So much dependent on material nature. Like if you see, it is substantial dependence, but we wrongly identify thinking that I am the doer. Doership, ownership, and
Enjoyship.
enjoyership. Right? So that is where, and now here again, it is said that the soul is never entangled actually. And there are few examples given to substantiate that fact, right? So the relationship of body and the soul is like what?
Relationship of body and spirit.
Like here, you know, the example of, you know,
Air entering into the water and mud.
here, just as sky, although all pervading, doesn't mix with anything due to the subtle nature,
Yeah.
right? In the 33rd. And also in 34th is the sun and the sunshine, right? So the soul is there in the body, and what is the symptom of the soul?
Consciousness.
Consciousness. And if you remember last time when we were discussing, we also discussed one example that how the soul is actually never, you know, it may kind of seem to be entangled due to misidentification, but soul remains pure.
Yes.
Because that example is very important for you to remember.
I think the bird in the one in Bhagavatam we have seen. The bird
So,
entering into a green tree.
Last time when we were discussing, I gave an example.
Is it that the air can enter water and mud?
Air can enter, no. That was something related to
I think
things falling in muddy water. So,
and I think it's like in Bhagavatam there are many
diamond ring
examples.
falling in muddy water.
Harshad
Diamond ring
Prabhu.
falling in
Yes. So if a paper falls in a muddy water, you have written a letter and it falls in the muddy water, you know, the paper is kind of spoiled. If food falls in a muddy water, what happens? It is spoiled. But if a diamond ring falls in the muddy water, what you can do?
Nothing.
You can use it.
Yes.
That is how is the relationship of the soul, and that is how it is explained that it is never entangled. Never entangled in that sense. That soul always remain pure. Right? So that is very important for us to understand, right? And then the last verse says that those who see with the eyes of knowledge difference between, you know, between the body and the knower of the body, and also understand the process of liberation from bondage, will attain the supreme goal. Yanti te param. So this is important, very important. Like these last 6 chapters are going to be more analytical in nature. But it is very important for us to understand these things. it helps us to actually see from a different eye, different vision. Okay. So next chapter is about 14th chapter is about modes.
3 modes.
15th chapter is about Purushottam Yoga. 16th chapter, divine and demonic qualities. Then 17th chapter, it will all again talk about modes,
Shraddha,
primary, different things in different. 18th chapter, if you see starting of the 18th chapter, again it will talk about modes. Modes are very important. Right? Okay. So any questions?
Our Bhagavatam classes are very useful, Prabhuji, to analyze this chapter.
Yes, yes. It actually So there is one important thing, Shanmugh Prabhu, thanks for highlighting the Bhagavatam thing. So I will just hold on.